Thank you, worship team. And thank you, all of you. It is such a blessing to hear all of you sing. I don't take for granted that we're a church that sings. I'm a little nervous about time today. I don't want to keep you guys till noon. You guys laugh, but you know what? I only preach every couple months, so I can keep you guys long. It's fine. I had a couple weeks ago, I think it was after our first week of the analog life, I thought, it really wasn't the point of the sermon, but I thought I would really embrace the analog life and get go back to using like a paper notebook. Right, you guys can laugh. This example is going to resonate with like 3 of you. I went to Barnes & Noble, and this is so cringe. I can't believe I'm sharing this with you guys. I'm very particular about like the paper that I use. I'm a bit high maintenance. You guys can laugh. And so I went to Barnes & Noble. I was going to get a Luke Term journal, and I was just going to get it, and it was going to be something in the morning. I'm going to sit down, and instead of all the noise of all my devices and the 1,000 things I need to do and the emails and all that, I'm going to sit down with this journal, and I'm just going to write out like what is the just non-negotiable things that I need to get done and focus on today. Who are the people I need to follow up with? Who are the people I need to pray for? And that was going to be like 2026 is going to be done right. And I got to Barnes & Noble, and it was packed, which, by the way, never happens. Never. And I walked to the journal section. I'm ashamed to admit how often I go there. And all the journals, all the Luke Term journals that I loved were gone. Like all of them. I had to get a moleskin. You guys don't care, but that's like a step down. And I thought, man, what is going on? That has literally never happened. And so I got home and I did a little Google Trend research. And wouldn't you know it, the end of December into early January, terms like dopamine detox, digital detox, analog, brain rot, all saw breakout rises in search trends. And for those of you that don't know, for Google to give a term the breakout badge, it has to rise by at least 5,000% in interest. That's not a small jump. And so I think it's safe to say collectively as the turn of the year came, there's just a mass of people that all collectively said we want maybe a little less of this fake stuff and the noise and more of this real thing. And not only is this evident among the general population, it seems, but many influencers even. The people we have those parasocial relationships with seem to be capitalizing on it as well. If I hop on YouTube, my homepage, you just scroll, is filled with videos related to dopamine detox, which if you're not familiar with that, that's like a fast from digital stimulus. Videos about no phone vacations and dumb phones and flip phones and apps to control your phone and all these things to limit the amount of digital noise in our life. And some influencers have even just come out and said, like, I'm going to be posting less. I'm making fewer videos this year. The scary thing, I thought this was going to be a common reality, but when I asked my wife and a few friends, they said that's actually not at all what they see on YouTube. Is that like any of you have seen that content? Only me. It's probably because I've Googled analog life 250 times the last month and a half for this series. Anyways, you guys, I think, can still track with me. There seems to be a trend, obviously not here, but elsewhere. There's a trend that is leading towards analog life. Less digital, less AI. I don't want the algorithm deciding things for me. I want more face-to-face, more physical things. I want to own the things in my life. And the problem is that trends rarely actually lead to deep transformation. They just come and go. And sometimes they resurface like the mullet. But trends, they come and go. They're fads. They don't create the actual deep change for the better that we need for us individually and for us collectively. And as Rob mentioned in week 1, we sort of began planning this series by asking the question, and really all of this series this year, we asked ourselves, what are some things that we want to be different in the life of our people? There's this desire to return to real life, but we want more for all of you than to simply adopt the latest trend. I mean, it might help. If getting a flip phone or locking your screen time or canceling your Netflix subscription, I mean, it's getting expensive enough to warrant it. If doing those things is helpful, great, but I don't want us to confuse the means for the end. Because near the top of the list of things that we want to be true for all of you this year is that you would experience deeper, more meaningful relationships with God, with one another, with the community, and the analog life, this cheesy term we've given it, the analog life, more than just a trend, is simply a means to that end. It's a means to deeper transformation. And so we need guardrails in place to help us ensure that what we are doing is actually transformative over time. If we only hear from this series, if you've been with us the last 3 weeks, that we need to reduce our screen time or delete an app, then I don't think that's going to get us to where we need to go. In fact, I would argue that if we just kind of do the low-hanging fruit, so to speak, what we'll quickly find is that we've gone to the digital world because something in our analog life has left us deeply unsatisfied. I don't spend hours of my evening, and I do it on occasion, I'll admit it, I don't spend hours of my evening doom scrolling when my real life is doing great. We don't watch endless TikTok videos or Facebook. There's so many different names for all the little short vertical videos. TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, they all have their own thing. We don't scroll endlessly on it or check Amazon 15 times a day or scroll Facebook or watch just hours and hours of shows that we've already seen over and over again. Anyone else done that with The Office? I'm alone a lot today. This is not good. I saw one hand go up. Thank you. We don't invest so much of our mental and emotional bandwidth into those parasocial relationships when we have deep and intimate connections with real people in our lives. We just don't. We go to the digital world when our analog life just isn't cutting it. And so if we rashly just pull the plug on our digital lives, and you look at the trend, you go, I'm going to get a flip phone. I'm going to delete all my apps. I'm not going to be on my phone for more than 40 minutes a day. I think we'll very quickly realize that there's a vacuum that needs to be filled. And we tend to just fill it by going back to the things that left us unsatisfied, whether it's our attention going to a broken or strained relationship, or failed dreams, or unfulfilled hopes, insecurities, or even just boredom. It's kind of like tinnitus. And for those of you that don't know, it's just a ringing in your ear. You get it from loud music, loud noises, all the stuff. I'm not showing myself in good light. Some of you are like, Preston's talking about tinnitus. Several months ago, he talked about weak eyes. He actually is 100 years old. But I wish I had better examples for you, really, truly. I need more life experience, I guess. Tinnitus, ringing in your ears, it is at its worst in silence. Like in the office, or if I'm in the car with the music low, or if I'm out in public, there's enough noise that I can ignore it, and I don't really notice it. But if I'm alone at home or laying in bed at night, it's just this loud, persistent ringing. And so if we jump on the latest trend and try to simply reduce or eliminate some aspect of our digital lives, I think we'll very quickly find that we are covering up a loud and obnoxious and persistent ring in our lives. And so today, I want to give us, hopefully, I wanted to say tools, but they're not very practical. I just want to provoke you guys a little bit and provide some guardrails that will help you stay with this more than a trend, but it'll help you experience how transformative the analog life can be with one another. And so our key takeaway today is that we need purposeful limits and life-giving rhythms to fully experience the transformative power of the analog life. If God has created us as relational beings to live in embodied relationships with one another, that was our focus of week 1. And if spiritual formation, which is transformational by nature, is most powerful side by side and not screen to screen, that was our focus last week, then we need purposeful limits and life-giving rhythms. We can take whatever picture we have, and some of us have that, where we're just this longing, the cloud with the dream in the sky, the longing of what the analog life could look like. What life together, just the dream scenario can look like, where it just happens naturally, and we love each other, and we never get annoyed or hurt by one another, and there's no mess. And we can just pop that bubble. It's not going to happen. Because in reality, there's actually a fair bit of friction and tension here in real life, both of which I think can be good. They can lead to growth. And so our limits and our rhythms help ensure that we neither pull the plug too early when we feel friction or venture too far down the wrong path when we feel tension. We need purposeful limits and life-giving rhythms to experience the transformative power of the analog life. And I believe that the Corinthians, they faced a very similar challenge as us today, albeit not with algorithms or AI, but with something deeper around this question of how does someone use their freedom, which has been made possible by Jesus, to their benefit and for the benefit of others. That's ultimately the underlying problem here as we face this tension between analog and digital. I can't point, if you look at the Old Testament or New Testament, I can't point to a passage that says, "Thou screen time shall not exceed 4 hours." It's just not there. And yeah, you guys can laugh at that. It's really not. Please laugh. It gives me time to drink. In reality, we have a lot of freedom. We can decide how our digital lives intersect with our analog lives. And there are some principles. But the problem with the Corinthian church, not church as an idea or as an organization, but church as in flesh and blood people. The problem with the analog church was that they were using their freedom very selfishly. And this led to divisions and immorality, people causing others to stumble, and even in the end for them to actually lose some of the freedom that they had once enjoyed. And as 21st century Americans, we like our freedom better than anybody, right? It's the air we breathe. And I would equate this freedom that the Corinthians had experienced, which was a very new thing for them in a lot of ways, to when we first receive our license. At the ripe age of 16, we get that license, or 17 or 18. It's getting later and later. At the ripe age of 16, we get that license, and now we have this new level of freedom and autonomy that we had never experienced before. And the Corinthians had the attitude of like, let's use and abuse this. It's just us, me, and the open road. And Paul, like a sensible parent, says, well, yeah, you have the freedom, but you still need to be responsible. We expect you to help with things like grocery runs and picking up your siblings and all the responsibilities that come with having a license, especially if you're an oldest sibling. In other words, your freedom does and should benefit you, but it should not only benefit you. In fact, if you are mature, you will use your freedom to benefit others. And so what does this have to do with our digital lives? Well, we have an untold amount of autonomy and freedom as a result of technology. Like if you pick up a history book or read firsthand accounts from like 120 AD, what we are able to do today compared to what they were able to do is insane. They could not have dreamed what we're able to do on our own. And with these new levels of productivity and creativity and knowledge, we have just this independence and autonomy. But like the Corinthians, this freedom has led to divisions and immorality and stumbling blocks. When I say stumbling block, it means to cause someone to feel uncertain about their faith instead of more confident. And in cases of addiction, it's even led to a loss of freedom. And so what advice then does Paul have to offer for freedom as it pertains to our digital lives? Well, The Corinthians need purposeful limits and life-giving rhythms just like we do. Look with me first at 1 Corinthians 6:12. Everything is permissible for me, but not everything is beneficial. Everything is permissible for me, but I will not be mastered by anything. Everything is permissible for me. That's a phrase that Paul is quoting back to the Corinthians. Notice it's in quotation marks. And what's very likely happened, 1st and 2nd Corinthians in your Bibles, they're letters. And there were several letters back and forth. We have those two. We don't have the others. And so Paul is quoting a letter that he had previously received from the Corinthians. And in that letter, they had said, everything is permissible. We get it, Paul. You don't need to tell us anymore. We know we're free. We can do whatever we want. And Paul is quoting back to them, ironically, like a rebuke, that you really don't get it. Because everything may be permissible. You may have this freedom in Jesus, but not everything is beneficial. And everything may be permissible, but you should not be mastered by anything. And so if our freedom and autonomy to utilize technology and decide how our digital lives intersect with our analog lives has led us to be mastered by something, then we've missed the mark. And there are obvious examples of this, especially in cases of addiction, whether pornography or gambling or gaming or shopping, things that we can just look at and say, okay, yeah, that makes sense. They can easily master us. More sneaky, however, are the things that are not necessarily wrong, but they master us by allowing us to believe that we are in full control of our lives. And Samuel James, someone who has written a lot about the wise use of technology from a Christian perspective. And I should note, I really enjoyed digging into this topic. And so in the Sunday Hub at the bottom, I tagged a couple of articles and books that I thought were helpful, especially if you're looking for more practical guidance. But Samuel James says this: the prioritization of personal narrative, that is, the stories we believe about ourselves, and more importantly, the stories that we want others to believe about us, is precisely why many conversations about everything from politics to the church eventually bottom out in, this is what I experienced, so here's what I believe. You can't argue with it. While experience and stories certainly shape us and are part of what it means to be fully human, this is the part that's important, the online liturgy of experience uses narrative to cancel any competing consideration of transcendent truth. In other words, whoever can tell you the more compelling story wins. And in a digital world where the content on your screens is quite nearly perfectly matched, not just to your interests, but your insecurities, your triggers, and your fears, the stories being told by the plethora of voices online will almost always feel so much more compelling than any analog voice around you. Like you can get on TikTok and YouTube and just feel like they're just preaching what I need to hear. That's intentional. We need real things to speak truth to us. Not AI, not the influencer that doesn't even know you exist, but the people sitting beside you. And there's an allure to the digital world right now because it promises and it reinforces that we, you and me, get to decide what is ultimately true for our lives. It's a choose your own adventure. And we get to pick the pieces of the narrative that fit us. We can control our narrative and what others see. If you're unhappy and want to believe that it's because of your spouse or your boss or your kids, the house you live in, the algorithms have a compelling story so perfectly crafted for you to reinforce that, both directly and indirectly. Directly in that the content literally outright says it's because of so-and-so that you feel this way, or indirectly in that the content you're viewing creates a comparison trap. It's just hard to love your real life when everything you see online seems better and more shiny and simpler and easier. And I want to be able to tell you that technology as a whole is just like this perfectly neutral entity and you can do whatever you want and don't have to think about it. But And that may have been true 15 years ago, but today, the digital world, a large percentage of it, is designed to master you, to gain an authority in your life that it should not have. It wants to tell you a more compelling story to keep you enthralled by leveraging your fear and your angst and your desires, and it does it in a way that makes you feel safer than with the people around you. It's intense, isn't it? And so when we talk about implementing purposeful limits, I don't simply mean reducing your screen time or deleting apps, although that may be necessary. Rather, I want us to see the meaning behind it. Purposeful limits ensure that our digital life does not master our analog life. It is the physical people in your life that care about you. When you need someone to mourn with you or to celebrate with you or to support you, just to help you grow, it is not going to be ChatGPT. It's not going to be the influencer with the fit body and seemingly perfectly well-behaved kids. It is not going to be the political commentator. It's not even going to be the pastor 8 states away that you love his preaching. I can't blame you. He's probably better. It's going to be the real people in your life that will be there for you. And I'm not taking a moral stance. I know it sounds like it. I'm not taking a moral or ethical stance against these things. A lot of the content in AI and digital tools can be very edifying. Just in preparing for today, I've used multiple devices and multiple apps and podcasts and articles and all these things that, had I not had those things, it would have taken me 15 times as long to put together a sermon. They all have a place. But if our digital lives cause us to distance ourselves, or even to objectify the analog people around us, or in our relationship with God, we begin to settle for the voice of the Christian influencer instead of seeking God ourselves, then I think it's time for some limits, some purposeful limits. We don't make compromises in our analog life because our digital life has a more compelling story to tell. And you may have noticed that I have not given you any limits to implement. You have freedom to decide. But I would argue, do it with the flesh and blood people around you. What has mastery over you? What compelling stories are you believing that have put you on this isolating path? And where is all of your time and attention going? You have the freedom bought by Jesus to not be mastered by anything, especially in the digital world. And as a personal example, you will not find me really on social media. Sometimes you'll see me pop up on Facebook, and that's probably because I'm selling something. So if you check today, I'm not even going to go down there. It's not even worth it. It's not because social media is inherently bad. I don't have anything against social media. And I'm not sharing that because I think all of you should get off social media. I think some of you would benefit probably, but you don't have to do what I'm doing. It's free. It's freedom. But I have to limit it because if I'm not careful, it will master me. If I'm not careful, social media will make me feel numb to real life. I spend way too much time on it. I'm not present with the people around me. I feel more anxious. I'm prone to ruminate on when my ego has been stepped on. I compare my life, my house, my situation. And in other words, it helps and masters me by helping me put myself at the center of my narrative. And slowly, my analog relationships, my wife, my family, people I work with, all of you, I no longer see you guys as people made in the image of God, worthy of honor and respect and love, but instead as side characters in my narrative. Because I have my own compelling story, and it's twisted. But the digital world, and you can take that to mean what you want it to mean, the digital world, the powers that be, sounds kind of dystopian, but we'll go with it, wants to leverage that to keep me enthralled. And so I have to take inventory of my life and use my freedom to say, okay, what has mastery over my life? How is my digital life forcing my analog life to serve it instead of the other way around? There's good news, though, because it's not just about what we limit. Perhaps more importantly, it's about what we do. If our digital life should serve our analog life, then likewise our purposeful limits should serve our life-giving rhythms. Paul says later in his letter to the Corinthians, essentially the same thing as before, but with a slight twist. This is 1 Corinthians 10:23. Everything is permissible. We have the right to do anything, but not everything is beneficial. We know that. Everything is permissible, but not everything builds up. Do you have the freedom to choose convenience over commitment? Absolutely. Do I have the freedom to unfriend or unfollow you if I decide that I just don't want to see your stuff anymore? Absolutely. Do I have the freedom to continue to just kind of decide like whatever content I want to consume based on my interests and what I find entertaining, regardless of whether it's edifying? Yes. We have the freedom to do that. Unironically, that's a freedom of ours. But even if I have the freedom to do something, that does not necessarily mean that what I choose to do will lead to my growth and the growth of those around me. Because using my freedom to choose commitment over convenience will build up. Using my freedom to patiently endure with someone will build up. Using my freedom to give my time to Jesus and his church will build up. You get the idea. We use purposeful limits to help ensure that our digital lives do not master our analog lives, but we use life-giving rhythms to ensure that our analog lives are all that they are meant to be. We don't get healthier by not eating junk food. That's a limit and a burden. We get healthier by eating good food and getting exercise, right? The limit simply makes space for the healthier practice, and I want us to focus on the healthier practice. And so life-giving rhythms are consistent practices that help us love Jesus and surrender to him by loving one another. Look with me at 2 Corinthians 3:17 through 18. Now the Lord is a spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And we all with unveiled faces, that is, we see Jesus clearly for who he is, are looking as in a mirror at the glory of the Lord and are being transformed into the same image from glory to glory. This is from the Lord who is the Spirit. We look at Jesus. And the language of that implies not just a glance, which in our culture where we're just constantly running in an attention deficit, that's usually all we can actually give Jesus, but it means an intentional, persistent gaze. Like how you might intently gaze at someone or something when you realize how special the moment is and you want to savor it. And in doing so, and gazing at Jesus, we are slowly transformed to be like him. And so, kind of the first principle of life-giving rhythms, our life-giving rhythms should help us to consistently look at, gaze at Jesus, so that we would love him more and be transformed by him. That's a spiritual way of saying what we are looking at and dwelling on matters. Paul, in numerous places throughout his letters, essentially tells followers of Jesus to, quote, set their minds on Jesus and to dwell on good things, things that increase our love for Jesus. A churchy way of saying that is we want to pursue and the content before us should stir our affections for Jesus. Meaning if the content of your digital life or the time you spend in the digital world has you feeling too full or too dull to connect with Jesus and others, then it's just too much. Our digital life should serve our analog relationships in a way that a soup or salad makes us ready for the main course. And so one of the life-giving rhythms is to leverage your digital life in such a way that it sets the stage for life-giving things, which are, again, consistent practices that help us love Jesus and surrender to him by loving one another. Look with me at Galatians 5. For you are called to be free, brothers and sisters. Only don't use this freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, but serve one another through love. For the whole law is fulfilled in one statement: love your neighbor as yourself. We surrender to Jesus by loving one another. Not we surrender to Jesus and love one another, but by loving one another. And that's an important distinction, even if it is a small one. Because I think the reinforcing narrative of the digital world, sometimes referred to as a digital liturgy, is that I can do whatever works best for me. And I can do whatever works best for me regardless of how hurtful or helpful it is for you. My surrender to Jesus is personal. So much so that loving you, doing right by you, and being faithful and honorable and respectful is optional. At least according to the logic and a lot of what I see online. But Jesus does not offer loving one another as an option to surrender to him. If we are going to surrender to Jesus, we must love one another. That is the essence of what it means to surrender to Jesus. We surrender to Jesus by loving one another really. Not figuratively, not purely digitally, although a digital tool can serve that, but really. My flesh and blood self must love and serve your flesh and blood self. If I am going to grow, and if we together are going to experience deeper, more meaningful life together. So I show up to church to see the people around me face to face. I serve because I want to be a contributing member to the community. I give my resources in secret, not because I want to create an aesthetic or because it fits my narrative, but because I believe that's what God wants me to do, and he honors that in secret. I try not to needlessly put stumbling blocks in front of you because I care about your faith as much as my own. I don't want to just think about what's best for me, but I want to build you up as well. And my digital tools, my digital life is going to serve that, not the other way around. So when we think about life-giving rhythms, we should understand that it's not exclusively life-giving for me, but for others as well. There are consistent practices that we should do, that we should establish and protect, that are not necessarily easy or give us warm and fuzzy feelings. And I was reflecting on this today during setup at just, today's the third Sunday of the month. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. Third Sunday of the month, we have a lot of families that help with setup, parents with their kids. And it was just this beautiful thing to see Kevin on stage with his son, showing him how to plug in cables, and the Curtis family, and everybody running around, kids doing their thing. But I can bet when their alarm goes off at 6 a.m., and the kids are groggy-eyed and not wanting to walk out the door and probably fighting it, that there's a lot of other practices that would make them feel more warm and fuzzy. But they understand the importance of being here and contributing here to this community. And so while it may not feel life-giving to them, it is life-giving to me. It's so life-giving to me to see it, and it makes me proud. And when we use our freedom in that way, it becomes transformative. It becomes an act of surrender to Jesus, and we benefit for that, but it builds others up. And that's the beauty of the analog life. I mean, can you imagine, just like close your eyes and imagine, of course I said earlier to pop that bubble of a dream, but we're going to do it anyways. Just close your eyes and imagine what a community of people could look like if we all lived like that. Like it would still be messy and there would still be friction. I don't like myself at 7 a.m. I don't think anybody here at 7 a.m. does either. Like, it's not perfect, it's not clean, but what would it look like if instead of having all of these competing, hyper-individualized narratives, we just instead just said, we are going to love Jesus, and we're going to intently look at him, surrender to him, and love one another. And we're going to do that together with the flesh and blood embodied presence around us. We're going to serve one another and give each other honor and extend grace to one another and be present. And we're going to do that collectively, side by side. It would be transformative. And that, to me, is so much more compelling than anything I can see online. It would be incredible. And so as you leave today, I've been playing with it this whole time. You guys are probably wondering, what is that Preston's playing with? Some, ADHD. As you leave today, we have two things for you. Rob's going to talk about the other thing. I'm going to talk about this thing. They're scattered on the back table there between the doors. It's a little cassette tape on like a cardstock business card. I wanted to get real cassette tapes, but cost. If you think about a mixtape, I know this predates me. I know I'm posing right now. I don't care. If you think about a mixtape, you create a mixtape for a specific purpose. Like I've got a playlist, which is basically a mixtape. It's called Highways. I've shared too many details about my personal life with all of you. Sandra's would be like, I can't believe you said all of that. I know. Highways, it's long, it's slow, it's got music you don't like. But if I have to drive a long distance, hence its name, I'm going to put that playlist on. That's my Highways playlist. Some of you have a go-to workout playlist, or your kids have a playlist with the same 4 songs on repeat that never end, I remember. But that playlist or the mixtape is something that helps enhance the present moment. It's not like everything you're doing. It just enhances the moment that you find yourself in. And back when cassette tapes were a thing, again, I know, predates me. Not any way around it. And you made a mixtape. You took a Sharpie and you just wrote across the top of it, the back of it, what that mixtape was for. You gave it like a clever, funny name. This tape was like, this was the vibe. I wanted to work that in today. That playlist, that mixtape was going to enhance whatever it is you're going to do. Whether you're driving or hanging out, it was just, or you're making one for the person that you were attracted to. It was going to enhance it. We're going to wrap this up. I'm getting out of here. And so as a visual, this is to serve you as a visual analog reminder this year. What life-giving rhythm, what consistent practice that helps you love Jesus and surrender to him by loving others do you need to commit to protecting this year? What is that just non-negotiable, this is what I'm protecting? What's going to enhance the analog life? Life-giving rhythms aren't the thing, but they enhance the thing, which is deep, meaningful relationship with God and others. And so you write it on this card, and you can put it somewhere where you'll see it, whether you tape it to your mirror or on your sun visor. And I want to be clear, I want you to write a life-giving rhythm. I don't want you to write a limit. Limits are burdens. That's not where life is. I want you to write a reminder that is life-giving for you and for others. And if you're creative, you come up with a clever phrase or something. There's not a lot of space to write a huge thing out. Like if you know, like, man, Sunday mornings need to be the priority. This is the life-giving rhythm I need. Call it church mix. It's not very creative. Or maybe like I wrote down a couple that I'll admit AI did help me with because I'm not that creative in that way. But like you've been served mix. Like this rhythm this year, I'm going to serve people. You can laugh at it. Or in this with you mix. I kind of like that one. Or you can even write a Bible verse. But for me, I just simply wrote prayer mix. Because I have found, especially in the last month, as we've done this series and reflected on all of it, that I have a lot of very superficial relationships with all of you. I see a lot of what you post online. I hear like bits and pieces of like so-and-so is getting married, or this is what they're doing, or this is what they're going through, and it's superficial. And I want depth with you. And so the life-giving practice for me, I think, begins. Lord willing, it'll lead other ways, but I think it begins by just unplugging and actually earnestly praying for you and checking in with you and becoming an embodied presence. And so that is one of the rhythms, and I have all the details of what that's going to look like, but that's one of the rhythms, my prayer mix. That's what's going to help me live the analog life this year. And so I encourage you as we sing this final song, I earnestly believe that the Spirit will poke you where you need to be poked. And consider, what is that thing that will lead you into the analog life, that will lead you into deeper, more meaningful relationships with God and others? I want this to serve you as a reminder this year, even just a fun reminder. Okay, let us pray. Father God, I thank you that you are a God who became embodied with us. You can empathize with us. You know what it's like to be human. You've given us this community that we would just know what it means, that we would get a taste of your love by loving one another, that as we pour ourselves out, that you would fill us up. And so I pray this year, today, that you would give us that life-giving rhythm, that practice, that step that you are poking us to lean into, that we would see it for what it is, not as another thing to do, not as a burden to be under, but that it would be an expression of our freedom. That with our freedom that you have given us, that we would step into it and surrender to you. That we would grow in our love for you and grow in our love for one another. And that in a year from today, we would look back and go, our community is so deep and so meaningful because we have people that are embodied with one another. So I pray a blessing over us today. Pray, God, that as we close out this service, that you would just be with us. Focus our minds on you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.